Welcome to That's Based. I'm your host, as always, Caleb Salvatore. We're laughing our way through the end of days, and we're brought to you by Outlaw Streamers. Head on over to outlawstreamers.com to learn more. Reporting from somewhere underground, shout out to our friends and sponsors over at Beach House Bar and Grill, just north of 103rd and Fort in Omaha, Nebraska. Remember, they got karaoke on Mondays, 8 to midnight, poker on Tuesdays, 7 to 9, trivia Wednesdays at 7, music bingo, 7 to 9 on Thursdays, and then open mic from 9:30 to whenever they get done. They've also got my show, my monthly comedy show that I sponsor there. March 9th, we've got the Roast Battle Tournament. That's Saturday, March 9th, 9 p.m., Beach House Bar and Grill, the official sponsors of That's Based, just north of 103rd and 4th Street. It's $10 cash or on etix.com. Again, that's Saturday, March 9th, Beach House Bar and Grill. We got a special show for you. We have got an interview here. We don't normally do these shows on Fridays, which is when this is going to air. We don't normally do Friday shows, but we've got an interview here for you. We've got Dan Frei coming on. He is running for Nebraska's 2nd District, which is a swing district. It's actually one of the tightest races every single year for both the presidency and Congress. He's running against Don Bacon, who we've been very, very critical of on this show. Don Bacon's done a lot of things that folks that agree with us, that maybe lean a little bit further to the right, don't necessarily agree with. He held up the speaker vote, and he's bent the knee to a lot of Biden's agenda, which I'm sure we'll get into here. And Dan Frei's the one who decided to step up and run against him. Now, he's a legitimate candidate. This isn't somebody from the fringe coming out just trying to make a name for himself. Dan Frei's primarying an incumbent he's primarying an incumbent and has been endorsed by the state Republican Party. I could be incorrect here, but I don't think that's ever happened before, at least not in this state. And then he also ran in 2014 against Lee Terry in the primary and nearly won there. So without further ado, Dan, how you doing today?
Caleb, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to have you, man. Not a lot of people want to come on here and be associated with somebody like me, you know.
I'll take the risk.
Okay, perfect. I love it. So you're running for office. How's that going? I know you just got started, but I always just like to ask.
I'll tell you what, it's going well. It's going well. We're doing a lot of getting out, meeting the people, talking to the voters, and I'll tell you, they're upset. They're upset. They're ready for change. So this is going to be an interesting election cycle. I think what we're looking at right now is this is going to be a change election, and you're going to have a new congressman come November.
I think a lot of people agree with that. So when you talk to these constituents, what do you find that upsets them the most?
Right now, hands down, absolutely hands down, very first issue is the border.
Yes.
And they see the millions and millions of people coming across that border. And they're looking at this, and the only thing that makes them more angry about the border and the condition that it's in is the fact that we are sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine while our border's wide open. We're dumping money into foreign countries while our border's wide open. Our citizens on the southern border are at great risk, and our government's doing nothing about it. And they're fired up.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed is they seem to care more about Ukraine's border than our own border. It's kind of weird how that works.
Here's the deal. The primary role of the federal government, protect and defend the borders of this country and the citizens therein. Now, I've never seen where that's negotiable. I've never seen where the federal government could come to the American people through their representatives and say, we can defend this border if. There's no ifs.
Yeah.
Protect the doggone border. This is not negotiable. So don't come to me. And this is one of the things that Congressman Bacon recently did, working with a handful of Democrats, was came up with this idea that we think that we can get Remain in Mexico re-implemented, but it's going to take about $26 billion of Ukraine funding. This isn't negotiable. I don't want to hear anything about Ukraine. I want the doggone border protected, because right now, with the number of individuals that are illegal aliens that are coming across this border, every state in this nation is now a border state.
Yeah, absolutely. It 100% is. You know, we just talked about on the show that aired Wednesday, the day we're recording this, but today, my mom got an email from the Department of Homeland Security just yesterday. Somebody actually used her name to forge an I-129 petition to try to get into the country illegally. So it's hitting everybody personally now.
Everywhere. And I will tell you, you're starting to see more and more of of what's going to become more commonplace. You look at this young lady that was just killed down in Georgia. I think it was Athens, Georgia, illegal immigrant. You look at a 14-year-old girl that was just raped and another gentleman stabbed, illegal immigrant. This is absolutely insane. So when you ask, what are the people talking about? The number one issue is the border. And it's going to be prominent from now until Trump gets back into office.
Yeah, and I didn't think after 2020 that Donald Trump had any chance in hell of getting reelected, but Joe Biden has just been such a disaster that he's made that not just a real possibility, but Trump's the Vegas favorite now. That's crazy.
He's got to be. And again, whether you liked Donald Trump or not, his policies were right on. His policies, what policy didn't we like? Did we not like the energy independence? Did we not like the interest rates? Did we not like the inflation rates? Did we not like the unemployment rates? Everything about Donald Trump and what he did from a policy perspective was right on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, when in 2016, I was skeptical of Trump. I voted for Gary Johnson. I wasn't a fan. And then living under him for 4 years, I was like, hey, this isn't that bad. And then I got another 4 years under Biden. I voted for Trump in 2020, but I got another 4 years under Biden now. And I'm like, oh, that really wasn't that bad. This sucks.
No. The first president in decades where we didn't get involved in another foreign war. Mm-hmm. And now within a matter of within the first year under the Biden administration, we're gearing up this military complex to go fight in battles that we're not even sure what the clearly defined mission is.
Oh, absolutely. There's a reason. That's what I tell everyone. There's a reason that Russia, China, and Hamas, all three waited until Donald Trump was in office was out of office to make their move. And it's not a coincidence.
Absolutely. But again, you can look at all of that. And we may feel for those individuals, but at the end of the day, until the borders of this country are secured and the people are safe, there's not another country I'm interested in securing their borders or helping them before we help the American people. This world is a safer place when America is strong.
Yeah. So if we get Congressman Dan Frei in there, first day in office, they're like, okay, let's put a bill together to secure the border. What exactly would you do? What would you change about the current laws? Would you remove any? Would you add any? How would you go about doing that?
Well, you've already, they were gifted the one of the best border policies that ever existed. So Correct. This is going to be easy. Bring back the Trump administration's border policies. Remain in Mexico. You don't have a right to come to this country. We're going to give you a court date and we hope you appear. Remain in Mexico. You're not coming into this country until your case has been heard. And believe me, I'm all about welcoming others in. I'm all about legal immigration. But I'm not interested at all in putting our citizens at risk for this feel-good policy that says, if you make it across the border, we're going to give you a court date, and then they never show up. They just fade into society, and we're starting to see what the ramifications are.
Or you get like in New York City where they get out on bail or with no bail after beating the hell out of a police officer, and they find them on a Greyhound toward Arizona.
Yeah. So again, what I would ask is, how in the world, this is a country that and I hear this on the campaign trail, this is a country that I don't even recognize anymore.
Correct.
Because it seems like the American citizen is last. And there's nothing wrong with an America First policy. Our ancestors came to this country and they created something that they handed down to the generations to come that meant something. And now my generation and those close to mine are throwing it away. And it's got to stop.
Yeah.
It's got to stop.
See, I know things are getting bad because the closer and closer we get to election day, the more I sound like my dad. And I'm just like, oh, it must be getting really bad. I kind of empathize with it now.
Well, is that necessarily a bad thing, though?
No. It's
I wouldn't think so.
It's crazy. Have you always been pretty conservative, or is that something you came into the older and more mature you got?
I've always been pretty conservative.
Okay.
Ronald Reagan was the first president I ever voted for.
Okay.
So and that was in his second election. His first election, I was able to go to his campaign events, but wasn't able to vote. So the second election I was. So
I'm going to date both of us right now. 2014, when you ran against Lee Terry, was the first election I was old enough to vote in, and you were actually the first person I voted for.
All right. Caleb, we could end on that note because I can't think of anything better. So that's all good, my friend. I appreciate that vote.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, you referenced that Lee Terry race. This race is teeing up to look very similar to Lee Terry.
Yeah.
And let me kind of give you some background there. When I ran against Lee Terry, it wasn't because I'd ever had this long, lifelong dream of becoming a congressman. I ran because at the time, the expansion of the federal government was getting out of hand. We were still feeling the aftermath of the government bailing out the auto industries, hundreds of billions to bail out the banks. We were dealing with this thing that we called Obamacare. The federal government had just taken over the healthcare industry. What was that going to look like? Were we going to be able to afford it? What was the quality of service going to be there? Were we going to repeal it? Were we going to replace it? Get this, Caleb. There were tens of thousands of individuals crossing our border illegally, and nobody was doing anything about it. Just tens of thousands.
That sounds I wish we could get there.
Yes. And we were $17 trillion in debt.
That's it?
That's it. 17 trillion. And I looked at that and I said, this is unsustainable. I mean, I come from the business community. I've never been in politics in my life, but I knew what we were doing in DC wasn't right. And I happened to have been involved in politics at the state and local level. So, and it was conservative politics. So I looked at this and I said, this doesn't make sense. We're digging this hole deeper. These same people that dug this $17 trillion in debt still have the shovel.
Yeah.
Something's got to give.
Yeah.
So, we threw our hat in the ring and we didn't know what we didn't know, but we did know what we were doing was not sustainable. And we got out and it was grassroots. That's back with the Tea Party, and people responded. We fell 2.9% short of making history.
Yeah.
So had we flipped 2.9% of the vote, we would have likely been in DC.
So that was the next question I actually had here. So speaking of that 2014 run, what did you learn then that you plan to implement this time around and maybe do a little bit differently?
Here's the deal. If you're running for the right reasons, you'll resonate with the people. And again, for me, it was never about holding office. It was about making a difference for those that were coming behind me. At the time, we had just raised 5 kids. I had 2 grandchildren and 1 on the way. I now have 10 grandchildren. And I have always said, it's about leaving something for them so that they'll have the same opportunities I had. I didn't realize it when I was growing up, but I grew up poor. But I had an opportunity to get out from under that and make something of myself. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not independently wealthy, but I've done well.
Sure.
And I wanted my kids and my grandkids to have that same opportunity. And I saw the American government, that our representatives, taking those opportunities away.
Yeah.
So here's what I learned. You do it for the right reasons. You'll never regret running for office, and you'll make a difference. And when I got out and I met the people, that message resonated, because what they saw somebody that was authentic, that was running for the right reasons. It wasn't self-serving, and it was about making this place better for those that came behind us. So that's it. So that's the same thing that we're taking to the streets right now. And I will tell you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, back 10 years ago, people were frustrated. They were tired of the same old stuff. It's a different environment right now. You've got individuals right now that are angry. They're mad. And if they're not mad, they're scared. But I mean, you look at where we're at right now. We have got the left trying to shove a woke agenda down our throats. So when I'm talking to the parents of kids, they're talking to me about what's going on in their schools. We are now $34 trillion in debt, and we've got a full-blown border invasion coming across our southern border.
Yeah.
Every metric that motivated me to run the first time is monumentally worse.
Yeah.
So, it's just a matter of getting out there, connecting with the people, letting them know that they've got an alternative, and they're grateful for the alternative.
It seems like a lot of the mismanagement under the Obama administration has been put into hyperdrive since Joe Biden took office. Now, we've made our theory on this show clear. I'm fairly confident when I say that I think the people in power are intentionally driving us off a cliff and trying to rebuild society and their Marxist ideals. Do you agree with that, or do you think this is just pure incompetence?
I don't see how you could not agree with it, because I don't think that there's a level of incompetence that could get elected and then do what they're doing.
That's exactly right.
So you have to ask yourself, what is the strategy here? And when you say the left, Caleb, if I'm being honest with you, it's not just the left. Right now, and again, I'd referred to this woke agenda that's being shoved down our throats and into our kids' schools and into our workplaces and even into the military.
Yep.
You look at this and you say, this is insane. And I've got parents asking me, Dan, how's this even getting a foothold? How is it that this stuff is being made normal? And here's the deal. The woke left is pushing this garbage and pushing monies into the budget to get DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs shoved into the schools.
Yep.
Now the House is Republican. They control the purse. So if you had anybody with any courage whatsoever, they'd stand up and say, not on my watch. It's not happening. This isn't right. So you look at what's going on, and I can tell you, I don't see how anybody could look at this and say it's incompetence. It's got to be strategic in nature. I just don't understand why both parties are involved in it.
That's pretty much my theory. Is I refuse to believe that anyone could get that high to not just a level in politics, but anything, business, university, whatever. No one could climb the ladder as far as these people have and be that stupid. I refuse to believe it.
No, if you come up with that explanation, let me know, because I would have to agree with you. It's not an accident. It's not an accident.
Not at all. No. So that was the one thing I was looking at your website today that stuck out. It said, the quote on it, it said, "We need statesmen who are concerned with the next generation instead of the next election," which is what I've been screaming from the mountaintop since we started this show, is we need people with skin in the game that actually care about the future 10, 20, 30 years from now with their kids and grandkids, and not just them. I mean, you have the Mitch McConnells and the Lindsey Grahams of the world that those guys are going to kick the bucket and leave nothing behind. Uniparty members.
You saw the good news today. Mitch McConnell has finally decided that he's done.
Down. Yes, he is done.
Is that great news? That's reason for celebration. When we're done here, I'm going to go celebrate. I don't know how, but I'm going to celebrate.
I got a champagne bottle, so
he should have been gone a couple terms ago.
Absolutely.
He long overstayed his day. But talking about the whole statesman issue, and here's the best way to explain this. And I had a gentleman that came alongside of me in my first race, and he was much more tenured than I was. He was very experienced. He had run campaigns before, and he came alongside of me and he says, "Look, young man," which believe me, I accepted. I was all good with that. He says, "I want you to understand something." He says, "The people of Nebraska want to be represented by a statesman, not a politician." He says, "Let me explain the difference to you." He says, "A statesman will go to DC and they will negotiate on policy, but they will never waver on principle."
Yeah.
He says a politician will go to DC and negotiate on everything as long as it gets them reelected. He says, you need to be a statesman. And I will tell you, I've carried that with me because that's exactly the core of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to DC because I long to be there. It would be much more convenient. All 10 of my grandkids live within 5 to 10 minutes of me. I've got a good gig going on.
Sure.
So, I look at the whole idea of going to DC and being there for X amount of years. I'm not doing it because my ego desires that.
Right.
I'm doing it because there's a job that's got to be done, and I'm willing to do it, and I've got the capacity to.
Absolutely. And I think that's really what the difference between you and Don Bacon is. Don Bacon is what you just described as a politician. I mean, that guy's done nothing but negotiate. I would ask people, can you guys name one positive thing he's done for his district since he took office?
I'll leave that to your listeners. Caleb, I'm biased, and I will tell you, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was mad. I'd be lying if I didn't say that there was anger here, because when Don came on the scene, he did everything necessary to check the boxes.
Sure.
As being a conservative.
Yep.
But I will tell you, and you had referenced the speaker battle as one of the things that made you upset or made you mad.
Absolutely.
It goes deeper than not being able to vote for Joe Jordan. Here's what makes Don Bacon one of the most dangerous Republicans in the House right now, is he didn't just decide that he wasn't going to vote for Joe Jordan or Jim Jordan. I'm sorry.
Sure.
When he was done, he ran to the first camera he could find and said, "Look, I'm willing to work across the aisle with the Democrats to come up with a speaker that we could all agree on." Think about that. This is not negotiating on legislation that's going to determine, are we going to build a school, or are we going to fund something? This is working with the Democrats to identify a speaker that sets all the legislative agenda.
Yep.
That's a dangerous Republican.
Absolutely. And that's, no, I appreciate that you're fighting mad, man. Like, I've been telling people, this isn't 2002 where we're talking about tax policy anymore. That's not what we're arguing about. We're literally fighting for the soul of this country. You should be a little pissed off right now. If you're not, I kind of question how much of a soul you have.
It's interesting because for the last couple decades, when you talk about fighting for the soul of this country, for the last couple decades, you have heard in every election cycle, this is the most important election cycle of your life. This is it. There's not, if we don't get it right here, we're done. We're done. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could have been a dog catcher on the ballot, and it was the most important election cycle of your life. Yep. Here's the deal to all your listeners. Congratulations. You have the opportunity in May in the primary and November in the general to vote in the most important election cycle of your life. Because if we don't get this right, we stand a very real risk of losing this country.
Very much so.
But when you look at what this lunatic left is doing right now, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to recover from that if they get more time.
Yeah. And that's what I do. That's what I tell people. I don't commentate on social issues. I analyze patterns, and I can see where this thing's going, especially if we get another 4 years of Biden. And it looks like the Democrats, they're in good position to take the House. That's what it looks like right now. And the Senate's a coin flip. So, I mean, you're looking at 4 years or at least 2 years of total Democrat control. We're in a lot of trouble.
It's interesting because I've been working with some fundraisers. And they're telling you this is a bad year to try to go out and raise funds because everybody is sick of both parties and they're just done. They're just done.
Well, they're sick of both parties and they have no money.
Right.
It's like nobody has any money.
Nope. It's going to be interesting.
I was talking to my wife the other day. I'm like, we're making significantly more than we were 2 years ago. And we've never been more broke. What the hell is going on? And it's the inflation that they tell us is only at 3%, but nobody believes that. No. So what do you think we should do about this inflation thing? Do you have any ideas on how to at least try to tackle this or quell it or what?
Here's what we've got to do. First thing that they've got to do is stop destroying the American dollar by getting us $34 trillion in debt.
Yeah, it's a good start.
That would be a novel idea. So here's my commitment to you, okay?
Okay.
And we can talk policy all night long. We can talk issues, policy. I'll go over all of it with you. But just to make things real simple, we've got to stop destroying the American dollar and the value of the American dollar, which means we cannot continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper in debt. The American government right now takes in revenue about $4.5 trillion a year. Caleb, they're spending over 6.
Right.
They're spending about 6.2, 6.3. Absolutely unsustainable. Even the chairman of the Congressional Budget Office has come out and said that the trajectory of the fiscal policy of this nation is unsustainable. Do you think it slowed anybody down? No. So we've got to get back towards more of a balanced budget. That's not going to happen overnight. It's not. It can't. But I will tell you this. When I'm in Congress, I will tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, if there's a budget that lands on my desk and it spends more money year over year, so more money this year than it did last, just understand I'm a no vote. We've got to reduce the deficit spending to get back towards a balanced budget. The other thing that we've got to do, and you're going to see this is going to make the news a lot here in the next couple of days. We're operating under a third continuing resolution. Now, I don't know if your listeners are real familiar with what that means.
No, go ahead and clarify a little bit.
Let me ask you, do you have any idea where your representative or your congressmen were in August of last year?
No idea.
I don't know where they were, but I know where they weren't. They were not in Washington, D.C. doing their job. They took recess. They shut down for the entire month of August, okay? Well, I don't know how many people get an entire month off at a time, but they shut it down. Everybody went back to their districts, went on vacation, did whatever they do. They left knowing full well that the first part of September, within the first 2 weeks of September, the budget was due. Their primary responsibility in the House, prepare a budget on a timely basis that serves and meets the needs of the American people. They knew when they left in August, they were never going to get that done in time. They were never going to make that deadline. So in order to keep the American people from unloading their wrath on them, they signed this continuing resolution, which gives them X amount of days, X amount of weeks to get that budget figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that continuing resolution expires. So they now sign a second one. We're on our third one right now, and it's due to expire any day now. And I'm going to bet full well that they end up signing a fourth.
Yeah.
I've got a better idea. Every one of those representatives know that the budget's due the first part of September every year. It's not a surprise. It's not a moving target. Stay in D.C. until your doggone job's done. I don't know how close you are to your congressman. I don't care if I ever see them, as long as they're in D.C. doing their job. I don't need to see them at a pancake feed. I don't need to see them at the local, park passing out Don Bacon secretary. I don't need to see any of that. I need to know that you're doing the job that we've elected you to do. So we're going to end up with our fourth CR and no budget, no completed budget that was due in September. So here's my commitment. Hell will freeze over before I ever sign a continuing resolution. Our job as a congressman is to prepare a budget in a timely manner that serves the needs of the American people. If you don't have it done, plan on staying. I come from the business community. I will tell you, you'd be fired for that type of incompetence. You'd be fired.
Absolutely. Well, that's like we talked about that. I mean, they're constantly missing their budgets. You'd be gone. There's the Pentagon. How many failed audits? And then they fail another audit and they go, hey, we only failed by $700 billion this time. That's an improvement. But I think fired if I said that.
Aren't they on their fifth failed audit? I believe it's 5 so far.
It's horrible. I know it's way more than it should be, and it'd be completely unacceptable in the private sector.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking out loud. If that were the IRS and they were coming to audit me and I failed all of those, I'm just saying there's consequences, but it doesn't seem to be that way for the government.
Yeah, so, I mean, well, it's like I'm a small business owner. I have clients, and I have things that are due for those clients at deadlines they give me. If I don't get that done by the deadline, they say, okay, bye, I'm going somewhere else. It's maybe I'd get one mulligan if someone was in the hospital or something, but after that one, I'm done.
You wouldn't get 4.
No, certainly not.
Snowball's chance in heck you'd get 4. And then last but not least, and again, when you look at all of this deficit spending, the American people need to understand that when we talk about sending money to all of these other countries, again, not only is that catastrophically bad because of the condition of our own country right now, but that is money that we don't have. I don't know how generous you are as an individual. I'd like to think I'm generous, but I will not mortgage my kids and my grandkids' future for money that I can be charitable with today.
Absolutely.
But that's what every one of our representatives are doing when we decide to shovel hundreds of billions of dollars into other countries. We're broke. We're broke. Let's just say it. We're broke. We're $34 trillion in debt.
Well, Dan, someone's got to study the drinking habits of alcoholic pigeons in Pakistan. Okay, that was one of the things they
have you been. You must be reading the
list of great
report.
Yeah, we did a whole show on that when it came out.
I'm telling you. And again, people ask me, Dan, where would you cut? Fine, you're king for a day. Where are you going to cut? I'd grab the Festivus report and I'd start right there. And that'd be a good start. But then I'd also, we're spending more money right now with our open border to house, clothe, feed, provide medical care for people that have broken into this country illegally than what we're spending on our own citizens that are here that are in need of care.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. Do you remember the epic battle that Donald Trump was having with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer because he needed $5 more billion to complete the wall? Hey, we don't have $5 more billion. We don't.
They have 60 for Ukraine, 90 for Ukraine, but
and hundreds of billions to take care of these people that are coming into the country illegally. I've got an idea. Take $5 billion, complete the doggone wall, secure that thing like Fort Knox, and then take all of the money that we would have been spending on these people to care for them and to provide for them, and take it out of the budget.
Perfect.
This isn't rocket science. Sadly, we're not sending our best and brightest to D.C. We're not.
No, John Fetterman said it himself. Well, he stumbled his way through it, and so that's
how bad is it when Fetterman is starting to make some sense?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Fetterman has gotten more conservative as his brain has healed, which I've noticed to be a pattern with a lot of people. I haven't always been as conservative as I am right now. I used to be kind of a left-leaning libertarian type. And I'll tell you what, there's three things that really started changing my perspective on life. Number one, I got off drugs. Number two, I got my mental health in check. And number three, I got married. So someone other than me was dependent on me. It's crazy how much those three things will change your life perspective.
Add all of that and then put kids into the mix.
Oh, yeah. And about a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm telling you, all of a sudden it becomes much more than just about what's important to you. It's about what am I going to leave behind?
That's already in my mind. I look at already in the back of my mind. I look at what's going on. I'm like, my future kid is going to have to foot the bill for a lot of this right now.
And they've done nothing to deserve it.
No, nothing at all. And that brings me into my next question here. So we look going forward, there's a very real possibility AI takes a lot of jobs. You look at AI's already left its mark. Recently, they say it's about 20% of college graduates could lose their jobs within the next 10 years. Shouldn't have took out the student loans, I guess. You look at some of the other stuff they had, like the fake Taylor Swift pictures that went viral. They say by the end of this election cycle, you're going to be able to deep fake a candidate on video confessing to horrible things that he never did. What do you think we should do? How do we get this AI thing somewhat reined in? How do we get it under control?
It's so new. I think there's a lot of that's got to be looked at, and I wrestle with it because again, I'm not a big fan of turning loose the federal government.
Same.
To rein anything in. I'm just not.
Yeah.
But there's got to be safeguards because when you look at what AI is capable of doing and what individuals with nefarious means would use it for, it's got to be looked at. But I think it's so new that the verdict's still out on that. So any politician that tells you that they have all the answers on everything, they're lying to you, which most politicians do anyway.
They're full of it. And I appreciate that, man. When somebody says, hey, I don't have the answer to that. Yeah. I used to do job interviews for a living, and it was part of my job. And one of the questions I would ask people is, why do you think Rome fell? And I didn't care. I didn't give a crap what they said. But if they made up some fake answer that I knew was wrong, I was like, okay, I'm not going to hire you because when it hits the fan, you're not going to come to me and say, hey, I don't know what to do. You're just going to make something up so you don't look dumb. And then we're both going to be in trouble. So I appreciate when someone says, hey, I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, it's interesting because again, I think what you'll see when you get on the campaign trail is people appreciate authenticity, and that's one of the things that even in my first race in a losing effort, it was close.
Yeah,
but I will tell you, I left that race a better person because I went into it with things that were important to me. I went into it with things that I wanted to change, and that was my motivation and inspiration. But if you do this for the right reason, if you run for office for the right reason, you will come to realize very quickly that what motivates you doesn't necessarily, it's not what keeps other people up at night. And there were a couple things that stood out to me. We were in the Cinco de Mayo parade, and immigration was a big issue 10 years ago.
Sure.
And it was a happening parade. There was a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of music. People were there for a good time. And I'm out front. And I'm shaking hands. Excuse me.
You're good.
And all of a sudden, I reach into this group, and there's a death grip on my hand. And a woman pulls me close to her, and she's in tears. She's sobbing. And she says, I want you to know, when you are elected congressman, you represent everyone. And she's starting to explain to me that her husband was here illegally, but she had no option. She came to that parade with that burden on her. And my contingent is now down the street. They're gone. So the candidate is back here. The contingent is up there. And my heart's breaking for this woman.
Sure.
And it's like, I'm standing there talking to her, but my contingent's looking for me. But when I left that parade knowing that her burdens are mine. Her burdens are mine. Whether we agree, whether we disagree, or what the circumstances were, I ended up, giving her my contact information, chatted a little bit later. But if you're in this for the right reasons, you'll be a changed person. And it was awesome. There were other times when we'd have a meet and greet, and I had this woman that she just broke down in tears because she was fearful for what the future held.
Yeah.
And you realize when you leave that meet and greet, she didn't come there just for the snack and the sodas or the coffee. She came there because you were her hope for a better future.
Yeah.
And we need to get beyond this politics of destruction and get back to what are we going to do to serve these people? What are we going to do to serve our constituents? And that needs to be the focus.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so I got a couple more questions for you. We got a couple of listener submitted ones we'll get to in a second here. But so kind of playing into the kids and future and everything. We touched on it earlier, the culture war going on in our schools. You've got the teaching kids that, sometimes boys can be girls, girls can be boys. I mean, this is going on as young as 4, 5, 6 years old. There's literal softcore porn in elementary school libraries. What do we do to stop this? And how do we carefully walk the line of not getting the government too involved in terms of how people parent their kids?
I'll tell you this right now, get the federal government out of it. Mm-hmm. The federal government's got no business or no position to be mandating what's going on, what you're going to spend the money for. Get them out of it. Federal government can do all of that. Needs to be handled at the state and local level. And the other thing that I would do, and you hit the nail on the head with that softcore porn. I don't know how many times you've seen these school board meetings where the parents, out of anger and frustration and outrage, will try to read at the school board meeting out loud the books that are in the libraries. Yeah. And they'll shut them down because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear how vulgar that porn is that is made available to those kids. Excuse me. What I would tell you as a congressman, and again, you've got a state issue and you've got a federal government issue, but as a congressman, I'd be meeting with my attorney general at the state level and saying, you've got to do something. Bring litigation against where the root of how this garbage got into my school. This is pandering and promoting porn to kids.
Yeah.
And that's what's got to go.
And that's the problem is one side of that issue likes to conflate it and make it seem like it's somehow, if I've got a problem with you telling my 7-year-old how to give a rim job, that means I hate the gay couple down the street. And I'm like, this isn't an LGBT issue. This is sick what you're doing here.
Yes. And I grew up in a time when, man, it was great to be a kid. It was great to be a kid. And we've taken that innocence and just made it okay to throw it out the window. And I'm telling you right now, as a parent, they've got to get involved. They've got to get active. And because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to fix this. But I'd be meeting with the attorney general of the state saying, you've got to bring charges. Here it is. This is what's being provided to our children. It's porn. And it's got to go.
It is. It's absolutely. We've played some of it. We've read some of it on the show here. And I'm like, I don't even know. We get kind of vulgar on this show. I'm not even comfortable saying that on the air.
Well, when you've got the school board that'll shut these parents down because they're reading literature that's available in the library at the school board meeting, that's all you need to know. Well, that's all you need to know.
My favorite part was I was having a discussion because I'm a stand-up comic semi-professionally, and I was having a discussion with somebody about this, and they're like, you're a vulgar comic. You say some offensive stuff and some messed up stuff on stage. Who are you to sit here and criticize these people with these books? And I'm like, here's the thing, the difference though. I don't think your kids should be at my shows. Right. You're a bad parent if you bring your kids to my shows. That's the difference. Is I know where the line is.
Your show has got an adult crowd that made the decision that says, I'm going to go and enjoy the show.
Yeah.
The kids that are going to school, that a completely different audience.
They don't have a choice. Absolutely.
No. So, and again, what individuals do as an adult, whether I agree with it or don't agree with it, you've got the freedom to do your thing. But when you bring the kids into it or you harm another individual, your freedom stops.
Yep, absolutely. That's exactly it. Okay, so we got a couple listener questions sent in here. We'll go rapid fire for you here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But so the first question we got here is from Patrick. So his issue is we've seen the Biden administration kind of bastardize the Justice Department. So at the FBI, the ATF group, the IRS, groups like that, where they've gone after them and just borderline harassed political opponents. Would you support defunding those agencies and shutting them down?
I would support a thorough investigation. And I think Donald Trump was headed in a great direction. When he came in, he said he was going to drain the swamp. I will tell you, I don't think he realized how deep that swamp was.
Sure.
And how corrupt it is.
I think he got burned doing that.
Yes, the corruption in D.C. has become so commonplace that sadly nobody is even shocked by it anymore. So I would tell you there needs to be thorough investigations, and if that means shutting them down and starting from ground zero, absolutely. You cannot have a two-tier justice system where what happens in D.C. is treated completely different than what happens in Main Street America. So yes, I would say right now there's got to be thorough investigations up to and including potentially shutting these organizations down.
So I don't know how familiar you are with the ATF's pistol brace legislation. Do you know how much do you know about that?
Enough. I mean, when you go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, the primary issue is with you get these unelected bureaucrats that basically pass laws and they haven't been elected to represent anybody.
Right. And I mean they've got no position whatsoever to be legislating what I can and can't do with my Second Amendment. None.
Absolutely.
Zero.
Especially something as benign as, I mean, that's for people that can't hold up a gun because they've got some type of injury.
Right.
It's batshit. Okay, this next. Oh, this one's a little brutal. This next one's from Jacob. He says, Don Bacon seems to put foreign lands ahead of his own district. Will you choose to represent ours instead?
I've got to tell you, I mean, that's why I'm here. Anybody that doesn't have enough stress or hassle or headache in their life, run for office. I'm not doing this because it's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because exactly what Jacob just mentioned, among other things.
Yeah.
We've got to put America first. And make no mistake about it, I am an America first candidate. People ask me, hey, what do you think about Donald Trump? I think he did a heck of a job. I don't care if he hurt somebody's feelings. I'm looking for a leader that's going to get the job done.
Sure.
Now, I'm not electing a pastor. I'm not looking for a pastor. I'm looking for a leader that's going to make sure that my kids and my grandkids are put in a position to where they can have all the same freedoms and opportunities that I was so fortunate to have. If that hurts somebody's feelings, it is what it is. That's
unfortunately, sometimes you need someone to go in and knock heads around. Every toolbox needs a hammer, right?
Right.
That's exactly. And then this last one here, it says, would you support the EPIC option, which, to be honest, I had to look up. It stands for Eliminate Property Income, Inheritance, and Corporate Taxes to replace them with the consumption tax. Would you support maybe replacing our current tax code with something that looks a little bit more like that?
From what I've seen of it so far, I like it. Am I in a position right now to say absolutely I would do it? I need more information on it, but I am all in on simplifying and changing our tax code.
Absolutely.
So what I would tell you is I would absolutely consider it. What I've seen, I've liked it. I know some of the people that are on the leading edge of that, and I've got a lot of respect for them based on our engagements from the past. So I would say it's certainly one that would get my attention.
Sure. Okay, so this is my last question for you.
Yes, sir.
This seems to be the hot button issue that plagues this specific district every single time election season comes around. So the general consensus, at least from people on the conservative side of the aisle, seems to be that Don Bacon is as conservative as you can get and still get elected in Nebraska's 2nd district. Are you too conservative to win? Has that thought crossed your mind? Are you worried about it? Or are you like, I'm going to go in and dog walk Vargas?
Are you talking about this conspiracy theory that we live in a purple district?
Yes.
Here's where I'm at on that. I've been in Nebraska for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
In 30 years, this seat has been held by a Democrat. You know how many years out of 30?
I believe 2.
2.
Yeah.
Do you understand when that was? It was Brad Ashford. Brad Ashford beat Lee Terry right after I primaried Lee Terry.
Yep.
Brad Ashford won not because everybody was turning blue or purple. He won because it was a protest vote against the Republican that had held the seat for 16 years.
And done nothing.
Okay?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this purple district has had a Democrat congressman for 2 years. I don't buy that it's purple. I buy that people get fed up and they stop showing up at the polls when conservatives refuse to lead.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the environment that we're in today, where people are mad or they're scared. Those are both emotions that are going to elicit a response at the polls. They're not looking for somebody that's looking to walk down the middle of the road. They're looking for their own version of a leader or a statesman that will go to DC and get some things done. I'm not going to win a popularity contest. I'm going to get some things done. So no, I don't buy that theory of a purple district. I buy that people will stop showing up when the person that they thought they had voted for fails to lead.
And that's exactly it. And that's what I try to tell a lot of the people that are a little bit more skeptical of that is I'm like, you guys don't realize that if Bacon does get through the primary, he's DOA in the general. I mean, he's completely alienated his base, and folks on the left, they think anyone to the right of Stalin is too conservative to vote for, right. So that's gone. So I mean, he's Bacon will get dog walked if he wins the primary because people just won't vote for, or they'll vote libertarian or whatever they got to do, but he's not going to get the votes.
It's interesting that you say that because we have said that this is teeing up to be another election like the last one I was in, to where if Don Bacon does squeak out a win in this primary, he will not win the general.
No,
he's alienated too much of his conservative base. They're done. They're done. So here's the deal. Not winning this primary is not an option. We've got to win the primary because the alternative is a Tony Vargas, a far left.
Yeah.
Potentially jeopardizing the control of the House.
Yes.
So that's it.
Yes. And so where can people go to donate to you?
Here's the deal, and I would greatly appreciate it if you would log on to Frei, and we spell our last name wrong. It's Frei, the number 4, Nebraska.com. So it's Frei, Frei, the number 4, Nebraska.com. If you jump on there, if you guys, if this audience is ready for a change, you've got your opportunity. But everything takes money. And when you're running against the incumbent, they shut the money down pretty quick. So if you could jump on there, make a donation, push that out to all your friends, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Hell yeah, man. We'll blast this everywhere too. I appreciate you coming on. Dan Frei, the revolution's just beginning. We will see you people Saturday, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Any closing comments?
Hey, I just appreciate the opportunity. I've enjoyed
appreciate
the show.
It too, man.
I enjoy what you do. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, man. Hey, and to the audience, cheat on your taxes, not your spouse. And as always, stay baked.